everyone, I'm Sadie.
And I'm Aliya.
And we're back with another episode of Two Opinionated Students. Today we'll be talking about the AP Research class, which is part of the AP Capstone suite of AP classes, and it is offered here at Steinbrenner High School. I took it last year, Aliya's taking it this year, and today we'll be talking about both our research projects as well as the class itself and how it has changed over the last year, which probably sounds not extreme at all, but of course in the world of AP exams and College Board, a year makes all the difference.
Yeah. I will say that AP Research is, like Sadie said, part of a 2-year program where you have to do AP Seminar first and AP Research. AP Research is basically like undergraduate research. It's like a watered-down graduate research, I would say. Where you have to write a giant paper, not a dissertation, but like the high school equivalent, and then you have to do your own research on it, and it's just, you get a feel of what undergrad and graduate research will be like, basically.
Exactly. It's a master's or doctoral style thesis program, is how it is often described. Mm-hmm. And so, as you can imagine, it's obviously not the same as getting a master's degree or a PhD, but that's not to say that it doesn't have its own intricacies and its own challenges that will help you be a better researcher and hopefully grad student in the future.
And along with being a part of a 2-year, like, taking the classes, you also have to have passed, I believe, four other APs. Yeah. Now, I'm taking it as a senior currently, so you took it as a junior, and
I'm sure that affected our experiences as well.
Definitely. I personally am really glad I took it as a senior. I took AP Seminar as a junior.
And I'm glad I did the opposite, so.
Yeah. So, we've mentioned AP Research in the past.
Absolutely.
On prior episodes, but we decided to, like, actually break it down and explain it, especially because AP Research is such a new, or not AP Research, but AP Capstone is such a new idea, and a lot of colleges don't even have credits for it yet. It's too new to even have like a credit really based for it. I know USF at least has not. I talked to their honors program, and they said that they don't even have anything for it.
I mean, only a few colleges give credit for it. Most of them give some sort of notoriety of, like, good job, we're proud of you. A lot of colleges acknowledge the program exists and promote it. I know the 2 colleges I ended up applying to, FIU and NYU, both acknowledge the program and say it's a very good thing you should participate in, but don't give you credit for taking it.
Same thing with USF. The head of the honors department was saying that while they acknowledge it, there's nothing out there in terms of, like, to credit it, and it'll simply just help you on your experience if you choose to do a independent thesis when doing undergrad research in the honors program.
Exactly.
Yeah. So my research currently is on Brexit, the British exit from the European Union. I'm looking at political and economic effects of it, and so you have to make your own research when you're doing your research. You have to create your own data.
This
basically
is not a science fair project where you get to repeat the same experience year after year, and it's not a lit review either, which is something that was made clear in the class, meaning you can't just research what other people have researched and phrase it into an essay. That's what you learn to do in AP Seminar. It's a very good class. I'm very thankful I took that class. But that's only what your lit review would be in AP Research. You have to do something with that information or do an experiment or something new for it to be your AP Research project.
Yeah, and so for me, my new research is making another prediction paper. There's already a bunch of different prediction papers out there, but due to like time constraints and just how new, and it's basically a current event that's ongoing as we speak, there's always going to be new light being shed on it. So I think, but it also inherently has a lot of limitations due to the fact of the time frame in which I'm conducting this research.
Yes.
I mean, I like the topic, and it's also relating to my interest in international relations anyway, so I'm not really complaining about it. It is kind of annoying, though, because during the most important phase of everything is when it's the most standstill in terms of what's going on politically. It's a deadlock. There's just nothing going on, which is frustrating for me as a researcher, but also just, like, I'm kind of glad because it gives me more time to focus on past stuff, and revising it, so I don't have any new things to really look at, I guess. And I think that's it for now. Like, there's not anything new. I doubt we're even going to come back to this, but, like, I would suggest looking it up on your own time just because it's a complicated topic, but it's also important, I believe, for future relations both within the EU and I think even internationally, the implications of it. I
wholeheartedly agree, and I'm not even doing the research project.
Yeah. And actually, it would be kind of part of the TED Talk thing, which
we're going to get into in our next episode, so stay tuned for that one.
Yeah, and it also kind of correlates with Sadie's prior topic due to the fact that I guess you could say it's the beginning of what Sadie has covered, in a way.
In its own special way it is. Alright, so we're going to introduce my topic. My topic was the UN preventing genocide, so yes, when I shorthanded it and said my topic was about genocide, I do not mean committing genocide. I don't know how many weird looks I got as soon as I said I'm writing about genocide, but I mean preventing genocide. And my research question was, using Dr. Gregory H. Stanton's 10 Stages of Genocide model, how can the United Nations better prevent genocide? So, as some context for most of our listeners out there who probably have not heard of the 10 Stages of Genocide model, a guy named Dr. Gregory H. Stanton created a model with 10 stages of genocide that describe how genocides work and occur. Every genocide has 10 stages, as you probably gathered by now. Stage 9 is extermination, when people die in mass. You can have interventions that happen before stage 9 to reduce large numbers of death from a genocide in the future. I decided to use these interventions coupled with the United Nations, where, of course, I would like to work one day in an institution I believe has the capability to prevent genocide, and I was able to combine these two things into essentially a list of interventions for each stage of genocide. It sounds kind of lame when I say it like that, because my research paper was ultimately 10,000 words long, and it had 5 appendices, which is how I got around some of the word limit and stuff. I was still a little over, but that's a different story. And ultimately, the way I structured my research was pretty unique, because for really obvious ethical reasons, I couldn't conduct an experiment with this, and a survey just really wasn't going to cut it. So what I ended up doing was called a grounded theory. And a grounded theory essentially has the researcher conduct a bunch of research and usually into the topic. In my case, it was reading a lot of documents and then coming up with a theory that is grounded in what they read. My theory was all of the interventions for each stage of genocide. Essentially, if the document were to be implemented, genocide could stop on a large scale worldwide. Those are pretty significant implications.
Yeah, it's very groundbreaking in terms of what the UN will be able to do in terms of prevention and implementing possibly punishments, I guess, in a sense.
Yes, there were punishments for committing genocide, of course, but there were also economic sanctions and whatnot that would prelude the stage 9. And speaking of the stages, stage 1 is classification, where the government tends to divide people into us versus them, and that's kind of where my paper ties into Aliya's paper, because Brexit kind of epitomizes the us versus them mentality in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Brexit, at least in 2016 when it first began, is part of a global, I guess, nationalist movement in a way. It's very much, stage 1 classification. It's very much implementing that us versus them mentality that we've been seeing globally for the last few years.
We've been seeing it in the United States.
The United States, Brazil,
China,
Brexit. Yeah, like, those are
Russia.
those are some extreme cases,
Yeah.
and some of them are a little older than 2016, obviously.
True.
Putin came into power in 2000, but
Yes.
he still is a good example. And Brexit specifically is a reactionary movement, a nationalist, populist, reactionary movement towards the fear of migrants coming in. That was one of the biggest fears cited.
Yes.
Because the EU, as they say underneath the EU, controls migrant policies, and Britain wants to limit how many migrants are able to come in due from Middle East crises and other things. I mean, that's not the only reason. Britain has been in a long-standing battle, Facebook, its complicated relationship with the EU since its establishment, and even prior to almost immediately after World War II. Because prior to the EU, it was like the original six, which was Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Italy, France, and Germany, and they made the steel and coal
Trade union,
something like that. I can't think of the word,
yeah.
but it was specifically just for steel and coal. And basically, from that point up until the EU's creation in the 90s, well, with the euro was created in the 90s, I'll say that, and that whole period between was basically just increasing the amount of dependency the European continent will have with each other, and allowing an easier and freer movement of goods, services, and people up until the point that it's completely free, and that everyone in the European Union has to follow the specific guidelines in terms of how they treat their economic relationships with other nations outside the EU, including tariffs, embargoes, and other such complicated issues, which is also a part of the Brexit issues, that they want to establish their own tariffs and make their own deals with other nations outside the EU. However, right now they can't even make an agreement with the EU despite this fact, just due to the fact of their inability to communicate with each other and to make their own agreements within Parliament and within just the EU alone, or with the EU alone, because the EU is Britain's greatest trading partner both for imports and exports, and if they leave with no deal or nothing in future made, and it's just them relying on the tariffs and embargoes is set from the EU, from the World Trade Organization, they can face anywhere up to 9% decrease in their GDP.
Which would be significant, especially to one of the powerhouse economies of Europe, even viewed independently, not just part of the EU.
That would be a high risk for a standard of living dropping significantly for all classes, except maybe the elite, super elite, rich.
Yes.
But everyone else, the middle class, poor, even higher socioeconomic, all of them would be hurt badly. A lot of companies, either based in London, like they are London English based, that trade a lot with the EU, or they are a multinational corporation that has its EU headquarters stationed in like London or something. All of them are currently pulling out, or at least threatening to pull out, if Britain continues to be at a stalemate with itself in its attempt to establish a future trade agreement with the EU. They've had 2 years since March 29th, 2017 to leave and to have a plant set out in those 2 years. It is currently March 5th, 2019. They have 24 days and nothing's been done yet. So we're going to see what happens.
That'll be very interesting, and I'm sure that makes your research process a little different from, say, reading textbooks from the Holocaust Museum.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Like
how this affects your methodology?
That's what I was saying in the beginning, was that due to this stalemate and due to this inability to, and this like time crunch, this 11th hour plan, I just haven't been able to move forward with my research because I wanted to base my research, or at least my analysis of whatever withdrawal agreement, trade agreement, future relations agreement they've come to, but nothing's happened yet, and we have not even a month to go. And it's just very frustrating because that last week of March is when they start AP research presentations. And
that's insane.
And so I probably won't be able to go until the end of April.
Probably
but
not.
That's just frustrating at that point because it's closer to me graduating, and I just want to get it over with as well. That's for me personally.
Yes, which is completely understandable. I'll admit all of the presentations were in April last year, so that wasn't as much of a problem. And while my issue is definitely a current one, there are genocides in at least 4 countries going on as we speak. Every 24 seconds somebody dies from genocide, and there are 92 million victims of genocide since the Holocaust, when we all said never again. So it's not that my issue isn't current, but the research I was using did not have to be up to date to the minute. And so that changed how I was able to do my research, because essentially I got sources from online places like the UN databases, like the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum's databases, like books that I found in the library, which I guess wouldn't be an online source, but it was still a source I used. I used plenty of books. I used books that I got digitally.
You're very much secure in the information that was provided to you for your background and your analysis.
Absolutely, and that never harmed my ability to have an analysis. If anything, I would wonder, do I not have enough? Do I not have enough? Even though I put a 600-page textbook from the Holocaust Museum, I still might not have enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if anything, that was where the issues came in, and there was no, oh my gosh, this has to happen, and my research is dependent on somebody else's actions, and I'm sure that is insanely frustrating, and that's probably one of the big differences between our 2 papers.
Yeah, because aside from, in terms of, like, the information being current or, like, you know, stable, aside from that, though, me and Sadie's research type is rather similar, because it's simply a historical analysis where we take a bunch of different documents and charts and create our own from that and have our own analysis of prior information, along with, like, new information, obviously, because you have to generate your own information, but it's still more or less looking at other people's information and putting it into a more concise packet.
Yes, or into a new way, like a new interpretation or new interventions. And ultimately, I think that, at least I know my year for sure, I'm not, I guess, really sure this year, it set my paper apart from a lot of the other kids' papers. We only had like 4 or 5 content analysis in the group of 26, so
yeah.
A lot of kids tend to go like a survey route or an experiment route, which is definitely not wrong, especially if it fits for your type of research.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting to see how varied the methodologies are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for everyone else's papers. There is a lot of historical analysis. I want to say there's about 25 kids in my class, and we have 2 periods. We have way more kids last year.
Yes.
We have way more kids this year than we did last year. About 5 of them, including myself, are doing historical analysis. One person I know definitely is doing a experiment where he's testing out plant soil and stuff like that.
Okay.
I don't know the exact logistics of it, but it's definitely with plants and stuff like that. and everyone else is doing, like, survey-related data. And while I wouldn't have mind doing a survey, I just really didn't want to have to do with statistics. I just wanted to avoid that. I'm going to be real with you. I found that Brexit, even though it's complicated in its own stupid way, I would much rather deal with that than having to compute, like, 250 different answers for a survey.
Exactly. I can't imagine doing that level of statistical analysis. Obviously, I didn't go super in depth with my statistical analysis in my paper. That wasn't the primary reason I chose my methodology, because I honestly have had this research question even before I took AP Research. So I've been working on this for a while, but something told me an experiment on genocide was a bad idea. And beyond that, a survey would only be seeing how much kids at my school know about genocide, not what can we do to solve it. And as interesting as that would be, and I think that really does tie into some of my interventions for stage 10, denial, seeing how much people know, seeing how much they're taught. Education is honestly the key to prevention here. And it sounds a bit cliche, but it's totally true in this context. That ultimately wasn't what I wanted my paper to be.
Yeah.
It could be future research, but it wasn't mine.
You could have done, mine's future research, which is
true.
The inherent difference in our
papers.
Discussion, reflection, conclusion.
Exactly.
You could have done, though, an experiment. Do you remember in 8th grade having to do the wave?
Yes.
Or at least watching that? You could have done something like that where you kind of like the first step
something.
1 or 2.
I could have done something like that, but honestly, A, the wave already happened, and B, I wanted to do something on the international scale, and experiments with genocide are inherently inhumane. The wave thing was more of a simulation, and just for the sake of our viewers, essentially a high school teacher for his contemporary history class in like the 80s got a bunch of kids together, started an organization called The Wave in an attempt to teach them how the Nazi Party was able to gain control over the country of Germany and all the people they conquered, even though only 10% of the population belonged to the Nazi Party, just like only 10% of the kids in the school would be part of the wave. Nobody got killed, nothing really dramatic happened, but a lot of research has been done on that because he essentially brainwashed like a bunch of high schoolers into being Nazis. So got some really interesting psychological and sociological implications there.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about like how that would tie into your whole your sales pitch of never again.
Yeah, even though I try not to use it as a sales pitch, you don't know how many variations of that title I saw. You don't. Never again, question mark. Never again, again and again was literally the title of something. Like the lie of never again. You don't know how many things I saw.
Yeah.
I honestly, that's kind of ruined that expression for me.
Yeah, it'll be something related, like not related to genocide, and it'll be like never again, and you're like,
Exactly, like, yeah, if I hear that even out of context, it's just like, please never again say that.
Yeah. I'm kind of sad. I've been wanting to do Brexit since, like, the end of last school year, because I was told by current AP Research students at that time last year to start looking at what my possible topic would be about the end of last school year. And so I was looking at Brexit already, but I kind of wanted to focus more on the actual nationalist side of it. That's what I was considering for a while. And I even wanted to do, if I wasn't approved for Brexit, I would have done maybe more on 21st century nationalism. I really wanted to do that. But Brexit ended up being approved, to my surprise, just, even though the timing, I anticipated it being this stalemate, but it's still frustrating. But, like, I anticipated it, and I thought that was going to get me rejected from that topic. So I had a backup, but I think if I had to do it over again, I think I would rather focus on that just for personal interest.
Which makes sense. Of course, I'm going to say, though, that the nationalism of the 21st century is interesting, considering the topic of my research paper, but I also think that might have been easier, and it would have been just as impactful and relevant to your field. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, doing the economic and political effects on the UK, specifically in reference to the EU, only because it's its biggest partner, and if it doesn't have its EU partnership down, like, solid and, like, future agreements done, they can't focus on anything else because the EU is their priority, and it is, even post-Brexit, it will be. And for the UK, in terms of political issues, it's super interesting as someone who's very much interested in politics on, like, the parliament, what is our version of it? The Senate. Congress.
representatives.
I'm so used to thinking about Parliament. I was like, what even is ours called? I know it's not Parliament. It's the Congress. I guess. Whatever. That is just interesting to hear, like, the infighting, and it's also a breath of fresh air, even though they have their own stupid government. It's different because I'm so used to hearing, you know, the T word in our Congress and all of that hearing the British issues, it's just a breath of fresh air, even though it's an issue, even though they're like, we can face a 90% drop in our GDP, it's like, yeah, that sounds so much better than what we're dealing with. Gotta be real with you.
It's certainly very interesting, and it is interesting to see how none of the governments are functioning as well as they could be.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what it falls into, is that it's almost a control, like, along with the 21st century, like, nationalism rise, it's also then that the governments are constantly more and more influenced by right-wing politics and politicians and groups. Yes. And it's very much just interesting to see because we see it with our own two eyes, and I feel like a lot of our youth, even the ones that are part of it, can see this happening, but yet it's still happening anyway. And if this goes more into something that Sadie wishes to prevent, never again is going to be heard more and more and more. There's already people comparing Mr. T to Nazis and to Hitler. Back in 2016, they were comparing him to that just due to the fact that he was encouraging essentially step one of the genocide.
Yeah, he is encouraging step one of the genocide model. Yeah, there's really not a nice way of saying that.
Yeah. And I'm glad that I'm able to discuss this in the way that I can due to my AP research experience.
Me too.
Like, I'm kind of sad the class is not as popular, or at least as widespread in the American curriculum as it could be, because even within our own county, I have like 20-something high schools, only like 8 of them provide AP research.
I believe so. I know some of the private schools do it as well, and they're not counted in that total. However, it's a pretty elite class.
Yeah. And with that, though, I'm afraid we're going to have to end it. Thank you so much for joining us. Sorry for this delay, because this will be our first episode coming back for the second semester.
This will be our first episode coming back from the second semester. We are so grateful for all of our loyal listeners, and we appreciate your continual support of both us and the Oracle newspaper here at Steinbrenner High School.
I'm Aliya.
I'm Sadie, and together we're two opinionated students.